In this video, we're going to talk about the 6 best heroes to dominate in Season 6. Right now, with so many buffs and nerfs, you want to know exactly what are the best heroes that you can grind if you want to improve, so we're going to break it all down. But studies say those who smash the subscribe button go on huge win streaks, so what are you waiting for? Press it right now and let's jump into it. Now, first off, I do have an honorable mention, and it's the new support Illari. I know that you can't play Illari in comp yet, but the second you can, this character is going to be insane. One of the best ranked characters, I think, period. A fantastic support, capable of burst healing, capable of high amounts of DPS and damage, playmaking. What more could you want on a character? The only reason they're in the honorable mentions category is because they're just not playable and ranked for quite a while. So if you want to prepare yourself, you can definitely grind the character. We're going to be making a guide for her as well, so you can watch it on this channel. But she's waiting in the wings to be really good, and she's definitely going to be good. It's no question. So yeah, she deserves to be on this list, at least as an honorable mention. Now, moving on to number 6 on the list. This is a character that I think just is consistently underplayed, and it's Echo. Echo just attacks the meta in such a very unique way, and she's super flexible in the compositions you can play her in. You don't need to even play an Echo with the Mercy. Echo gets to poke, has a pretty strong neutral game, can dive in if you need to, and in addition has a very powerful ultimate that can get value by itself. Now, keep in mind that you don't want to play Echo like you do Pharah. You're not trying to fly around, hit the skybox all the time. Mainly what you're trying to do is push up to an aggressive angle, poke the enemy down, and try to get value that way. And then if you see an opportunity, you can definitely pivot into a more aggressive play. But a lot of the time, you're going to be flushed out of an angle, and you're going to use your fly just to get to safety as a form of mobility. I would say that this character doesn't really have any bad compositions. Like, you can play this character in dive, brawl, and even poke. I just think that you change up how you play this character. While you're more likely to go all in around like a Winston engage with your flight, with your bubbles, with your beam, you're less likely to do that, and you're going to try to rely on these aggressive off angles instead with compositions like poke and compositions like brawl. Now, next up, we do got to talk about number 5 on the list. We have Baptiste. And Baptiste, I just think, has just kind of gone under the radar, even though he's so freaking strong. He has high ground taking for free, which means that he can be really good on a lot of maps that want to just take up that high ground really quickly, whether it's Route 66, whether it's New Bonnie. Baptiste can play on these maps really well. He can enable a very aggressive brawl, so let's say you're playing a Rein, a Junker Queen, Baptiste can keep all these people up, and even in compositions that he doesn't naturally fit in perfectly to, like let's say a dive for instance, he can at the very least still add a ton of damage-based value. He can pressure out Echoes, Pharahs, he can do damage to a lot of DPS. And while you're definitely going to have to make sure that you're combining and weaving healing and damage often with this character because he has more heals than you could possibly need, you need to get damage-based value with him. I will say that all in all, he has the entire package that you need to carry a ranked game. So yeah, I would definitely suggest Baptiste this season. Next off, we do got to talk about number 4 on the list, and I would say that this is Junker Queen. And I think Junker Queen has just been a little bit slept on ever since her slight nerfs, even though she's still freaking nuts for ranked play. Like, one of the best things to be doing, forcing a brawl on most maps, except for the really long distance maps. Junker Queen is going to be able to just solo carry like just about no other tank can, with giant cleaves, the ability to self-sustain, you to pivot and go in good matchups in the direct confrontation if you can force a close range engagement. So let's take a character like Sigma. If you just use the map geometry and routing, you wait for your moment to close in the gap, you're going to be really, really good in that. You're very good as an anti-dive character against divers. So characters like Winston just have a really hard time doing anything against you. And even Hammonds, you can always just hit them with your knife, pull them back in. The biggest thing that you're gonna have to learn on Junker Queen is your limits. Like, sometimes the only way out of a situation is to go in, and it's scary because you're like, oh, I should just run, I'm weak, whatever the case may be. But sometimes Junker Queen can actually double down on a play and it works out, and the only way that you're ever gonna figure that out is by limit testing. Sometimes, and when you're learning Junker Queen, you're gonna die a lot, and that's okay, but I promise you, once you learn these limits a lot better, and you know when you can go for an aggressive play that will still work out and keep you with that full sustain and you're not gonna get traded out, I think you're gonna have a really good time with this character. Now, for the next character on the list, I'm actually cheating and combining both Sojourn and Ashe together. These characters are both incredibly strong, and I think they're about the same in power level. So you could pick one or the other, or even play both of them if you prefer. Both are incredibly good with or without pockets. Both provide constant pressure. They both have an AoE ability and single target burst damage. They also have fairly comparable mobility. I would say that the only really core change or difference between them is their ultimate, and I think that in the head-to-head, Ashe's can be a little bit more impactful, but in the neutral, without a pocket, I think Sojourn probably takes the cake. Regardless, I think both of these characters are really, really good picks this season. They not only provide consistent value and pressure, but they're very good at taking off angles. They're very good at pressuring out the enemy backline, and especially with supports being really strong right now, having DPS that can consistently apply pressure with an AoE on top of them over and over again, denying their passive heal, constantly making it so they can no longer peak their tank. This is really, really good stuff. Plus, with the tiny windows of time, having a burst amount of damage, whether it's an Ashe headshot or Sojourn's railgun, really strong stuff that allows you to capitalize on little positional mistakes with the enemy. And so I think if you are looking for a DPS to pick up this season, one of these two would be a fantastic pick. Ashe, I do think it's a little bit easier to get value with in the lower ranks. Plus, she's decent at contesting characters like Echo. But regardless, I'm going to leave it up to your personal preference. Both these characters are fantastic right now. Now, the next character that we got to talk about on this list is Kiriko. Now, Kiriko did get quite a few changes. Her Suzu no longer CCs, but against her strongest opposition, aka Ana, or the character that she needs to keep in check, her Suzu is going to be more powerful, getting that burst amount of healing. And while Kiriko isn't going to have as much crit percentage now, she's going to have a higher average DPS. So that means on average, and especially with the majority of people in the majority of ranks, I would say outside of Grandmaster, you weren't hitting consistent crits anyways. And that just means Kiriko is just better now. She's an incredibly solid character that wants to take these aggressive off angles, teleport to her DPS, and create situations where she enables them and takes just sporadic 2v1 fights against the enemy team. Your DPS are fighting for an off angle and you just go interrupt that and just give your DPS the win for free. You can take and apply pressure from these off angles as well, and sometimes you can even push in, wrap the enemy team, and get out safely. Your mobility allows you to play incredibly greedy with your position and still get out just fine. And in addition to that, your Suzu is just incredibly powerful. In addition to the ultimate that if you just use it to start off most fights, you're gonna have a huge chance of winning them. It just creates so much momentum for your team. Kiriko is kind of like that all-in-one package that I would say is gonna be a character that you play against a lot and is one of the best characters to learn how to play for the foreseeable future. She's good in poke, she's good in brawl, she's good in freaking dive. Of course, she's like needed in dive. She's just one of the best characters in the game right now, and I would definitely suggest you start to grind her. Now, last but certainly not least, a character that actually did get a pretty substantial buff, but has been good for quite some time, I would say, is D.Va. Now, in the Overwatch League and in pro play, Winston sees a lot more play than D.Va, and this kind of leads people to believe that D.Va isn't good in the meta. And I think especially for ranked, when you don't have that perfect synergy around a Winston, D.Va can just be straight up better. Like, D.Va gets to allow you to peel. She has very high amounts of burst damage. She gets to play at a more flexible playstyle that doesn't require your team to commit with you and utilize your bubble as much. And she doesn't even have to really play in a dive. You can play her with hit scans. You can play her in a lot of different compositions, meaning she's a very flexible tank. And she also doesn't really have any hard counters. D.Va can play around pretty much anything that can counteract her. She's one of the few tanks in the game that can actually contest flyers, putting pressure on Pharah and Echo. And really, this character is something that is hard to learn. It's going to take a long time to get good at her, but I would highly suggest you start now because she's just so freaking strong. Anyways, is there any characters I missed that you think people are underrating? Let us know in the comments down below, but do me a solid and smash that like, subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll see you next time.